What if everything you've been told about being alone is wrong? What if the silence everyone runs from is the very place where power is born? Stay with me. By the end of this video, you won't just think differently about solitude. You'll want it. There's a moment most people dread. The moment when the room empties, when the phone stops buzzing, when there's no one left to distract you from yourself. We call it loneliness. We call it being left out. We call it a problem to solve. We scroll, we binge. We call someone, anyone, just to fill that silence. Because somewhere along the way we were taught that to be alone is to be weak. That solitude means you've been forgotten, that the crowd validates you. That noise means you belong. But the greatest minds in human history, the Stoics, they knew a different truth. Retire into yourself as much as possible. Seneca. They didn't say this because they were depressed. They didn't say this because they were antisocial outcasts hiding from the world. They said it because they understood something most people never discover in a lifetime. Solitude is not the absence of power. Solitude is the power. This video is for you. If you've ever felt like being alone means something is wrong with you. This video is for you if the world's noise is drowning out your own voice. This video is for you if you're ready to stop running from silence and start using it like a weapon. Welcome to Wisdom of the Stoics. And today, we explore the mindset that doesn't just survive aloneness. It becomes unstoppable because of it. The noise they sold you. Let's start with the world you actually live in. You wake up and before your feet hit the floor, you're checking a screen. Someone posted. Someone commented. Someone shared something that needs your reaction. Your entire existence from the moment you open your eyes is being pulled outward, toward others, toward opinions, toward the endless exhausting performance of being seen. And if you ever slow down long enough to be alone, truly alone, without the phone, without the background noise, without the podcast or the playlist running, you feel it. That discomfort, that itch. That quiet desperation, and most people immediately reach for something to make it stop. But here's the question no one asks. Why are you so afraid of your own company? Think about it. You spend your whole life with yourself. Every thought, every memory, every dream you've never told anyone. You are the one person who is always there, and yet you treat being with yourself like a punishment. The productivity of presence. Here's what the world sold you. Connection is strength. More followers, more friends, more social capital, more power. And the connection is beautiful. Don't misunderstand. The Stoics didn't reject humanity, but they recognized something chilling about the pursuit of constant connection. Most of what we call connection today is actually distraction, dressed in warm clothing. We scroll through other people's highlight reels and call it being social. We nod along in meetings we don't care about and call it collaboration. We chase validation from strangers on the internet and call it community. Meanwhile, the most important relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself, is starved. The Stoics watched this happen 2,000 years ago. They just had different names for it. The philosophy that forged emperors. Stoicism was not born in a quiet monastery. It was born in the chaos of the marketplace. Around 300 BC, a man named Zeno of Citium lost everything, his entire cargo, his fortune, his former life, in a shipwreck. He washed up in Athens with nothing, and instead of rebuilding what he had lost, he did something radical. He sat down and thought, deeply, alone, for a long time. What emerged from that solitude eventually shaped the minds of emperors, senators, generals, and slaves across the ancient world. Because what Zeno discovered, and what every Stoic after him confirmed, is this. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your inner world. Everything else is noise. The Stoic triad of solitude. Here are 3 concepts the Stoics used to describe the power of being alone. Pay attention to these. They might be the most useful framework you encounter today. On hegemonikon, the ruling faculty. The Stoics called the rational governing part of your mind the hegemonikon. Think of it as the command center of your entire life. Every decision you make, every emotion you feel, every response you have to the world, it all originates there. And here is the critical insight. The hegemonicon only functions at full power in solitude. Surrounded by noise and social pressure, it gets hijacked by other people's opinions, by fear of judgment, by the tribal need to fit in. Alone, it awakens. It becomes sharp. It becomes yours. 2. Eudaimonia, flourishing from within. Most people spend their lives chasing eudaimonia, what we roughly translate as happiness or fulfillment, in external things, status, approval, pleasure, comfort. The Stoics had a devastating counter-argument. None of those things are under your control. Any happiness built on them can be taken away in an instant. True flourishing, the kind that is permanent, unshakable, indestructible, comes only from virtue, from your own character, from who you are when no one is watching. And who are you when no one is watching? That question can only be answered in solitude. Dutch proheresis, the freedom only you can possess. This is perhaps the most radical Stoic concept of all. Epictetus, a man who was literally enslaved, taught that there is one thing in the universe that can never be taken from any human being: your faculty of choice, your proheresis. Your master could command your body. The emperor could exile your family. Fortune could strip away your wealth. But your choice of how to respond to all of it, at the direction of your will, that was forever yours alone. Think about what Epictetus is saying from the floor of a slave's cell. He is saying, I am free, because the most important part of me lives in a place no chain can reach. That place is the inner life, and you can only access it when you are willing to be alone. The most powerful man who talked to himself. Let me tell you about a man who ruled the known world for nearly 2 decades. Marcus Aurelius commanded armies. He managed the politics of an empire that stretched from Scotland to Syria. He presided over plagues, wars, betrayals, and the deaths of his own children. And every single morning, before the generals arrived, before the senators demanded his time, before the weight of the empire pressed down on him, he sat alone. And he wrote to himself. What we call the Meditations was never meant to be published. These were private notes. A man in conversation with his own mind, sharpening himself in the silence before the storm. He wrote things like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wrote that on a day when perhaps barbarians were at the border, or a trusted advisor had just betrayed him, or he was fighting the grief of another loss. His solitude was not escape. It was preparation. It was sharpening. It was the act of returning to himself so he could face everything else with clarity. The inner citadel, your unbreakable core. Marcus had a concept he returned to again and again. He called it the inner citadel, the fortress of the self. Imagine a castle. Stone walls are 3 feet thick. A tower no arrow can pierce. Inside that tower, you, your values, your judgment, your character, your peace. Now imagine the world outside that castle. Storms, sieges, chaos, betrayal, the relentless unpredictability of being alive. The Stoic practice of solitude is the practice of returning to that inner citadel, of reinforcing the walls, of knowing that no matter what happens outside, there is a place inside you that cannot be touched. Most people live their entire lives outside the castle, reacting, defending, chasing, losing. The Stoic retreats inward first, and from that foundation, they engage the world without being destroyed by it. What this looks like in real life. Let me make this practical for a moment, because this isn't about ancient emperors. This is about you. Think about the last time someone criticized you publicly. Maybe at work, maybe online, maybe someone you trusted. What was your first instinct? Defend yourself, retaliate, perform outrage, seek reassurance from others. That's living outside the castle. You're letting what happens outside determine what happens inside. Now imagine this. You receive that same criticism, and instead of reacting instantly, you pause. You go inward. You ask yourself honestly, is there truth here? What does my own judgment say? What would the person I am becoming do right now? That pause, that brief, powerful retreat to your own inner citadel, that is Marcus Aurelius' practice. That is Stoic solitude in the modern world. And it only works if you've been building that inner citadel in the quiet, in the alone time, in the deliberate practice of being with yourself without flinching. Why silence terrifies the modern mind. Here is a statistic that should stop you cold. In a famous 2014 study at the University of Virginia, researchers gave participants a choice: sit alone in silence for 15 minutes, or press a button that administered a mild electric shock to themselves. 2/3 of men and a quarter of women chose the electric shock. They preferred pain to silence. Read that again. They preferred pain to silence. This is not a small thing. This tells us something profound about what we've become, and how urgently we need what the Stoics were teaching, what silence actually is. We think of silence as emptiness, as nothing. But the Stoics understood silence as fullness, as the condition in which the mind becomes most alive. Seneca wrote about this with characteristic bluntness: omnia aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est. All things are foreign to us. Time alone belongs to us. When you fill every moment with noise, you are giving away the only thing that is truly yours: your attention, your time, your mental space. You are handing your most precious resource to everyone and everything around you and calling it connection, the discipline of stillness. The ancient Stoics had a daily practice of what we might call reflective silence. Not meditation in the modern sense, though there is overlap. Simply this: morning stillness before engaging the world, evening review in quiet before sleeping, and throughout the day, what Marcus called the retreat to yourself. Brief pauses of inward attention. What happens in these moments? The noise of other people's expectations falls away. Your authentic desires become audible. You can hear what you actually think, not what you've been told to think. You can feel what you actually want, not what the algorithm has been feeding you. In other words, you become yourself again. The counterintuitive truth about productivity. Here's something that might surprise you. Some of the most prolific and powerful minds in history, not just Stoics, but scientists, artists, leaders, have credited deliberate solitude as the engine of their greatest work. Isaac Newton developed the theory of gravitation during a period of forced isolation during the plague. Darwin spent hours walking alone every day on his thinking path. Einstein said his greatest insights came not from collaboration, but from long periods of solitary thought. And Marcus Aurelius wrote the philosophy that still guides millions of people, alone, at night, in his personal journal, never intending anyone to read it. Alone is not where great work goes to die. Alone is where it's born, the person you become in solitude. Here is a question that the Stoics would consider the most important question you can ask about yourself. Who are you when there is no audience? Because here's the uncomfortable truth about most of the personal growth industry. A lot of what passes for growth today is just performance. We grow for our Instagram followers. We read books so we can post quotes. We meditate so we can tell people we meditate. We hustle so the world can see us hustling. The Stoics called this living for the external, and they considered it one of the most dangerous traps a human being could fall into. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Epictetus. What you would be is a question only answerable in solitude, because in solitude the performance stops, the masks come off, and what's left, stripped of validation, stripped of comparison, stripped of the gaze of others, that is the raw material of your actual character. The Stoic discipline of self-examination. Every evening, Seneca asked himself 3 questions. What bad habit did I overcome today? What virtue did I practice? Where did I fall short of who I intend to be? This wasn't self-criticism for its own sake. It wasn't shame or self-punishment. It was engineering, precise daily refinement of the self, done alone, in honest silence without anyone watching. This is the discipline that creates what we call character. Not the grand gestures, not the public moments, the quiet, private daily work of becoming. And it requires aloneness, because character cannot be built in the crowd. Character is what you are when the crowd is gone. Aloneness as identity, not isolation. I want to be careful here, because there's a version of this message that could be misheard. The Stoics were not teaching misanthropy. They loved deeply. They served their communities. Marcus Aurelius ruled with genuine care for his people. Seneca had friendships he treasured for decades. Epictetus taught students with tremendous warmth. The difference is this: they came to human connection from a place of fullness, not desperation, from a place of choice, not needed. When your identity is built in solitude, you don't need the crowd to tell you who you are, which means when you engage with others, you bring your whole self, not just a performance designed to win approval. People who are comfortable alone are magnetic. They don't cling. They don't need to impress. They listen deeply. They speak from genuine conviction. They have what the Stoics called autarkia, self-sufficiency. Not coldness, not arrogance, just the quiet security of a person who knows themselves. That is a form of power that no amount of followers, likes, or social validation can manufacture. The Stoic solitude practice for the modern world. Let's make this actionable, because philosophy without practice is just entertainment, and the Stoics had zero patience for entertainment that didn't change your life. Here are 5 Stoic-based practices you can begin using today, not someday. Today. Practice 1. The Morning Citadel, 5 to 10 minutes. Before you look at your phone, before you check email, before the world has a chance to tell you what to think about today, sit with yourself in silence. Ask, who do I intend to be today? What values am I committing to in the next 16 hours? What is within my control and what am I releasing? Marcus Aurelius did this every morning. He called it preparing for the day, not scheduling tasks, preparing his mind and character for what was coming. 5 minutes. That is the cost of an unshakable foundation. Practice 2. The Seneca Evening Review, 10 minutes. At the end of each day before sleep, Seneca would conduct what he called an accounting of the day, not a list of tasks completed, an honest moral inventory. Where was I controlled by impulse? Where did I act with integrity? What did I learn about myself? What would I do differently? Write it down if you can. The physical act of writing deepens the reflection, and over months, you will see patterns, both the places where you are growing and the ones where you keep returning to fight the same battles. Practice 3. The phone-free hour. Choose 1 hour each day, just one, where you are fully alone with your own mind. No podcasts, no music, no scrolling, no background noise. Walk, sit, cook, drive in silence. Do something with your hands. The goal is simply to practice being with yourself, to train the mind to find the stillness comfortable rather than threatening. It will be uncomfortable at first. Do it anyway. The discomfort is the point. That discomfort is what the Stoics would call the place where growth lives. Practice 4. The voluntary hardship. This one is distinctly Stoic and often surprises people. Seneca regularly practiced what he called voluntary poverty, living for short periods as if he had nothing, sleeping on a simple mat, eating plain food, wearing plain clothes. Not because suffering is virtuous, but because comfort is often a form of enslavement. When you practice willingly going without, you discover that you can, and that discovery makes you fear loss far less. In the modern context, take a weekend with no entertainment, no social plans, no comfort consumption, just yourself, your thoughts, and the bare necessities of life. See what surfaces. See who you are without the comfortable distractions. Practice 5. The single honest question. This is the simplest and perhaps most powerful practice of all. Once a week, sit with yourself in complete silence and ask one question honestly. Am I becoming the person I am capable of becoming? Not the person others want you to be. Not the person your past has made you. The person you, in your deepest moments of clarity, know you are capable of being. You will rarely be able to answer this honestly in a crowd. The crowd wants you to perform, to compare, to compete. In solitude, the honest answer arrives, and it will either comfort you or disturb you into action. Both are useful. I want to speak directly to you for a moment, not as a narrator, not as a philosopher, as someone who understands what it feels like to be surrounded by people and still feel profoundly, achingly alone. There are people watching this video right now who have been mistaking their solitude for a wound. Maybe the relationship didn't work out. Maybe the friendships have drifted. Maybe success came and the crowd didn't show up. And now the silence feels like judgment. Maybe you've spent years performing for everyone, around you, being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who holds it together, and the thought of sitting with yourself in silence feels like the one thing you can't afford to do because you're afraid of what you'll find. I need you to hear this. The Stoics didn't teach solitude as an escape from pain. They taught it as a confrontation with it, a courageous, deliberate turning toward the self, especially the parts that hurt. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in the middle of a plague, a war, and the grief of watching his children die. He didn't retreat to solitude because life was easy. He retreated there because life was almost unbearable. And solitude was the only place where he could find a floor to stand on. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius, the silence you've been running from, that is where the floor is. The discomfort of being truly alone with yourself. That is not the absence of strength. That is the beginning of it. There is a version of you that has never needed applause. That has never needed the validation of others to know its own worth. That looks at the chaos of the world and feels a quiet, steady fire inside that does not go out. That version of you is built in solitude. One honest morning, one quiet evening, 1 hour without the noise. One question answered with total honesty. The Stoics built empires and philosophies and enduring wisdom from exactly this kind of solitude. You are not doing less than the world by choosing stillness. You are doing more. You are doing the hardest thing there is. You are building something that will last. What you now know. Let's come back to where we started. Being alone is not a weakness. It is not a wound. It is not a sign that you have been forgotten or that you are not enough. According to some of the most profound thinkers and leaders in human history, people who were tested by war, by loss, by the full weight of human suffering, solitude is the birthplace of power. The hegemonicon awakens there. Your proheresis is exercised there. Your inner citadel is built there. Your character is forged there. The Stoics didn't just survive their aloneness. They weaponized it. They turned the silence into steel, and they left behind 2,000 years of evidence that it works. The one thing to do this week. Don't try to change everything at once. The Stoics would tell you that's the move of the impatient, not the wise. Just do one thing this week. Choose one of the 5 practices we discussed. Just one, and give it 7 days. The morning citadel, the evening review, the phone-free hour, the voluntary hardship, or simply the single honest question. 7 days of deliberate solitude. See what you discover about yourself. I think you'll be surprised by who's been waiting there. Call to action. If this video gave you something, a new perspective, a moment of recognition, a practice you want to try, do me one favor. Share it with one person who needs it. Not because of the algorithm, but because somewhere right now, someone is sitting alone and feeling like it means they've failed. And they need to hear that it doesn't. If you're new here, welcome to Wisdom of the Stoics. We do this every week, ancient philosophy, rendered for the life you're actually living. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And in the comments, tell me, what does your relationship with solitude actually look like? Is it something you embrace or something you've been avoiding? I want to know. And I read every single one. Never be in a hurry. Do everything quietly and in a calm spirit. Do not lose your inner peace for anything whatsoever, even if your whole world seems upset. Saint Francis de Sales, take care of yourselves. Take care of your inner citadel. I'll see you in the next one.